Hello everyone, my name is Roya, and today I'm going to be telling you about the 6 books that I read in the latter half of June. So I actually ended up reading 12 books in the month total, and I talked about 6 of them in my part 1 wrap-up already, and now I'm going to be talking about these 6 that I, just read in the second half, and that is really awesome. I've been, that's 12 books is definitely above average for me, and that still puts me at I've been consistently 10 books ahead of my Goodreads goal, which is really cool. So anyway, here we go. The first book that I finished in the latter half of June is Warrior Princesses, and this is an anthology of a whole bunch of different short stories about different warrior princesses, and some of them are, fictional, some of them are totally fantasy, they're all completely different. So I, as the case it kind of tends to be for a lot of people with short stories, short story collections, is that I liked some of them and not so much others. So the thing is, too, about fantasy short stories and sci-fi as well, is that there's only so much world building you can really squeeze into short fiction, and so I think a lot of fantasy and sci-fi short stories sort of meet their downfall in that because they try too hard to incorporate too much world building and too much character development and all that other stuff, and really they need to be like a lot more plot driven. But some of these were really, really good. A lot of them I kind of thought that they would have been better as a whole book. Like I would have wanted to read a whole book about that short story, but some of them did really well as short stories, and I think my favorite one is the first one in here, which is called My Princess, and it's by Elizabeth Moon. And that one did a really good job of kind of explaining who everyone was and what the situation is without necessarily going into a whole ton of detail and, having it be too much stuff for a short story. So that one was really great. I also really liked the one that Robin Hobb wrote as her non-pseudonym, Megan Lindholm. That one came towards the end. It was like the second to last one, and that one actually took place in modern day, and it was pretty much the only one that did, and so that was really, really interesting, and it was like refreshing to see something like that after reading a whole bunch of stories in a row that are very similar to each other. There is one story in here that really weirded me out by the end, because basically the end, this chick like gets raped by these 2 wooden people, and I was kind of grossed out by that, not because of necessarily the subject matter, but because of the dialogue, and then also the fact that it's that part is told from the point of view of this chick who kind of is like kind of sees what's going on and goes like, oh well, it kind of serves her right for having a big ego, and like leaves. And so I seriously had to read the last like 2 pages of that story like about 10 times over again because I couldn't believe that was really how it ended. And so so I read a lot of books that have a shit fuck ton of rape in them, and I don't even like bat an eyelid. Like I don't think I'm not sensitive to the subject of like rape when it comes up in books at all, but for some reason, just the last scene of that story just grossed me out so much. Like it just did not sit well with me for the whole rest of the day. I was like bothered by it. So I have no idea. So basically just like, know that if you plan to read this. I also read Heart's Blood by Juliet Marillier, and I actually buddy read this with Emily from Emily Hornberg, whose channel I will leave a link to down below. But anyway, this is basically a Beauty and the Beast retelling, which, as the case usually seems to be with Juliet Marillier, is a historical fantasy set in Ireland. And I loved like all the historical stuff about it. I thought it was really, really awesome. They had the whole Norman invasion, etc., etc., and the magical elements were very, very downplayed. They didn't have it, there were no like fairies or anything. It was kind of just ghosts. And basically this chick named Katrin goes to Whistling Tor, which is this place like really far away from her, and she wants to like be the scribe for the local chieftain. And the chieftain is this guy named Anluin, if that's how his name is pronounced, and he is disabled in that about half his body just isn't quite, so he can't like fight, he can't ride a horse, like all that stuff. So he is really, really down on himself, and really is like really depressed and all this stuff, and obviously they fall in love, but they don't seem to think that they can be together because Anne Lewin is like so in denial that like Katrin would really be interested in him because of the way he is, when really in reality she doesn't give a crap. I really liked the like I love how the love story is very it's a very slow burn and it's really awesome. And then also you know, Anne Lewin's disability doesn't get cured by magic or anything. Like it's treated pretty well in this book. Um and then but the one like criticism that I kind of have of this book that I thought was so weird and just jumped out at me as just being really odd and out of place is that there's just a part where after Katrin has realized her feelings for him and all this other stuff, she kind of like has this conversation with her sister about like but what if what people say about him not being able to have children and stuff is true, because I want children one day and bloody bloody. And I kind of thought to myself, like, dude, Katrin, like, why do you give a crap? Like, when, you know, isn't the love of your life so much more important than your desire to have children? Like, I mean, maybe I don't get it because I have no interest in reproducing, but like, but I just kind of thought, like, why is having children even a thought? Like, why does that even cross her mind as a concern at all when, like, she's in love? Like, when you're in love, who gives a crap, right? So I just thought that was kind of weird, and it really only came up, like, once, and I was like, why is she suddenly, like, so concerned about that? So that was weird, but overall, though, this was a really good book. I also read The Thief and Queen of Atolia by Megan Whalen Turner. These are the first and second books in the Queen's Thief quartet. I think it's a quartet. And these are so good. Basically, they take place in a faux ancient Greece esque world where basically a lot of stuff is based on Greek mythology, like the world building is, I mean, and all the mythology that they have in this world, but it's not the same stuff with the name changed or anything like that. It's actually really different and in a really like genius way, but you can still tell where Megan Whalen Turner gets her inspiration. And I'm still like just not sure which of the two books that I've read in this quartet so far I like better, because they are both so good, but they're really different from each other. And the first one is told in first person, and the second one is told in third person, and just completely different stuff happens in both of them, and it's really, really great. There's tons of political intrigue and all this other stuff. So I loved the crap out of both of them, and also I ship it hard. And finally, I read The Diviners and Lair of Dreams, both by Libba Bray. This is the first and second book in the Diviners. I think it's going to be a trilogy, but so in the first book, we basically have a ghost that's running around killing people, and we don't quite know why. And then this girl named Evie goes to New York from Ohio to live with her uncle, who is a curator of a museum of the occult. And so one day a police officer comes to her uncle and says, hey, somebody's been murdered and there's some really weird mumbo jumbo stuff going on and we could use your help actually. So Evie goes, okay, I'll get my shoes. And he's like, Evie, you're not coming. And she's like, what? And miss out on a chance to see a murder? So she winds up going. She discovers some stuff and a lot of stuff happens, and this book was so good. It takes place in the 1920s, and just all the historical aspects of it were just so great. The way people talk is so spot on, and I loved it. I was so pleased with how much historical stuff, like how much more historical stuff than paranormal stuff was in this series. I thought it was great. Evie is such a fun main character, especially in the first book, because she is so, like, out there and really funny and all this stuff. But the one criticism that I have of the first book in particular is that there's a love subplot that seriously comes out of absolutely nowhere in like the last couple hundred pages of the book. I think it's even the last 100 pages of the book. I seriously was like, where did this come from? Because it's between Evie and somebody else, and basically, like, they had no indication of any attraction whatsoever to each other until that point. Like, she actually seems to have a hate to love thing going on with someone else, and so I was like, wait, where'd this come from with this other guy? I'm so confused. Like, It literally read like they're in a really important situation where they would not be thinking about that. Like they're investigating something really important, they might be in danger, and then suddenly it's like, she couldn't help but think about blah 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 blah, and then it switches to the guy's point of view, and it's like he couldn't help but think about her, and blah blah blah, and I kept just thinking, like, where did this come from? They indicated no attraction to each other whatsoever for the entire book. There was nothing at all going on there, and then suddenly, like, I was just like, where did this come from? And it bothered me so much, to the point where I docked it half a star just for that, because it was so annoying. Otherwise, this book would have gotten 5 stars from me. The second one I think is slightly less good than the first one. Like, I liked it slightly less. It was still so good with the historical aspect of it, and it's so relevant politically to everything that's going on today, because it takes place, you know, in the days of the Chinese Exclusion Act and all this other stuff. And so, you know, there's this whole, like, political undertone of, like, keep out foreigners, keep America safe, and blah blah blah, and the main character is going, like, dude, I'm pretty sure that's not how it works. All of that, which is, and it's really, really awesome, but my gripe with the second book, however, was just, first of all, the continuation of that same love story that we get, like, randomly at the end of the first book. It keeps going on, and I just didn't get it. I was like, what is going on here? And then also just the fact that it juggles too much, like too many different points of views, and without anything like the killer ghost from the first book to tie them together. And then also parts of it also started to feel too much like the Gemma Doyle trilogy, which is also by Libba Bray. I really liked the first one so much. It would have been like the perfect effing book if it weren't for that stupid love story that came out of nowhere. The second one, I still loved the crap out of it, but I just didn't, you know, it just didn't have, like, the pizzazz that the first book did, but they were both very good. These plus the 2 other books in those 2 same series that I listened to on audio are the books that I read in the latter half of June. So if you read any of these, please let me know what your thoughts are, and I will see you very soon with another video. Bye!